Hi there, this is Daniel with In Time Country Living, and in this video I just want to show you guys a little bit about splitting firewood and give you some recommendations of how to do it best. So a big part of country living is dealing with firewood. That's one of the things that is so great about living in the country, is that you can supply your own heat, and you can even cook on your wood stove if that needs to happen, if you don't have electricity for some reason. So this is about February 14 here. Happy Valentine's Day. So one of the things I'm doing this afternoon is filling up our firewood boxes here and taking them inside so we can keep our wood stove going. It's actually been pretty mild weather out here. Now let's see, it's about 43 degrees right now and a little bit sprinkling out here, so I got my hard hat here with a brim around here. It's really great for keeping the rain off my head and keeping me from getting a wet hat or a wet head or anything like that. So one of the things that I do almost every day is to come out here to the woodshed and chop up a little bit of firewood, put it in my tubs, and take it back inside. So one of the blessings of having a little bit of property out in the country and having a little bit of a forest there is that you can get your own fuel for keeping your house warm, and you don't have to rely on the electric company to supply electricity to run heaters or gas. You don't have to pay for the gas. You can go out to the woods, put some labor in, and you can have fuel that you can use to heat your home, and if needed you can cook with. So I'm very thankful to have a woodshed to keep my firewood in. This is something fairly new for me in the last couple of years. I've been very blessed to be able to have a shelter that will keep the wood from getting all wet, especially during storms. It's easy to cover up a pile with a tarp or a big piece of plastic. But when those big gusts of wind and the big rainstorms come, a lot of times that plastic, or even put tin over the wood, a lot of times it'll blow off, and you go out there and the wood's wet now, and you have to cover it up, and hopefully it'll dry out a little bit from over time with a little bit of airflow. But this is so much better to have an environment where you can keep the wood secure and safe, and winds can blow around here and you don't have to worry about the wood getting wet. And you can store all kinds of other stuff in here, like I got my lawn mowers, some tillers over on the other side that are all have a little area where I can protect them now too. So there's a few different ways, and I've progressed over time to figure out the best way to come out here and collect the firewood and bring it back to the house. When you live in a place where there might be forest fires, it's best not to have a supply of wood right on the porch or somewhere up against the house, because that's a big fuel source that you're going to have to, if there is, super dry times, you're going to want to make sure all that wood is away from the house. So I find it just as a matter of getting used to a certain way of doing things and not have to worry about it. Just keep the wood far enough away from the house so I don't have to worry about being fire hazard. So one of the things I've done in the past is to get a wheelbarrow and come out here and fill it up and then take it back to the house, the front door there, and then go in and get my tubs and bring them out, fill them up, and then take them back in the house. Now, that works fairly well, but one of the things that I've found that actually saves me time and a little bit of effort is just to bring the tubs out with me to the shed. I only got 2 of them now, and that seems to be enough. It kind of makes it a daily habit. If I have like 3 or 4, then it starts to be a little more cumbersome. And it just gives me something to do on a daily basis rather than every other day, or a day and a half and try to change it. So I know, like, usually in the afternoon I'll come out here and get the firewood for the day and then take it back inside. So one of the things that you need when you are getting firewood is a good pair of gloves so that you're not getting slivers or get scratches and other things on your hands or blisters from chopping too much. So one of the types of gloves that I like to use is leather gloves, and the main reason for that is when I am chopping wood I need my hands to be able to slip along the handle, and cloth that are dipped in rubber are maybe a little cheaper, maybe not, but they don't work very well when chopping wood. It kind of grips onto the handle a little bit too much, and so it's not very good for doing chopping. So leather gloves I would really recommend when you're doing chopping or just working for firewood, so you don't have to worry about having two different types. So when you're out getting firewood, it's best to get a good pair of leather gloves. I would really recommend to get the leather ones, because the cloth ones that are dipped in rubber or other types of rubberized gloves don't allow, when you are chopping, for your hand to slide along the handle as you come down. The hand that is up by the head needs to slide down and come together, and that means that if it's gripping too much, you're going to be kind of fighting it on the way down, as opposed to being able to slide easily. And leather allows the little bit of slippage, a little bit of friction, just about the right amount. Also, the best type of leather when you're looking for gloves is goat hide. It's a little bit thinner. It gives you a little bit more dexterity. But the main reason is that it's actually more durable and will last longer than cowhide will, or even deer hide, which is probably the worst for leather gloves. They're very soft and very nice, but they wear out fairly quickly. So just if you do a little more research, you find out that the goat hide is what I would recommend. So when you go to split firewood, there's about 3 different tools that you can use to do that with. The first one, which I'd recommend, is called a splitting maul, and it's basically a very fat axe, like a wedge that is put on a handle, and this is about an 8-pound one. That works very well. It gives you a little bit of momentum and allows you to power through some of the harder woods as well. Another type would be a splitting axe. So it's an axe that's a little bit wider on the backside, but pretty much just an axe that you use to split the firewood with. It's going to be lighter weight, so it might be easier if you're fairly weak to be able to swing it, but you're going to have to swing it and throw it a lot harder in order to get the wood split. And so the negative side of that is, you're putting more of the effort into the splitting the wood and when this is coming down, this is providing a lot of force and a lot of extra weight that it powers through the cut. So you're more likely to get the wood split the first time, or even the second time, as opposed to maybe the 3rd or 4th time if you're doing a splitting axe, unless you're extremely strong and can just power through the wood. So the third option would be a sledgehammer, maybe an 8-pound hammer or something like that, and use a wedge. So you put the wedge on the top and you get it started a little bit, and then you whack it a few times to power through. That can be a very good tool to have, especially if you have some really hard blocks or some big rounds of wood that you need to split up, some really big trees. So those are very, very helpful in that situation, because you can keep pushing through and powering that wedge through to get it split. But it's a little bit more inefficient when you are just taking small chunks of wood and getting that split up. Really would recommend the splitting maul for that job, just on a daily basis. And if you have some really big stuff, to go get a sledgehammer and a wedge to power through some of the bigger stuff that you're just not able to with the splitting maul. So one of the best places to get a splitting maul that's high quality without paying too much is to go to places like a thrift store or a used store, some place where they may have some old tools available, and to look for something that was maybe made in the the 40s, 50s, or 60s, or somewhere in that time frame. Some tools that are made in the 40s and 50s tend to be very high quality. They only usually have one type of steel that they used for tools, and it was usually very high quality. They didn't have the lower end stuff that's softer, that they could pedal and to be more of a disposable item. People really wanted high quality things, and so that's kind of what was available. And so if you can find something like that, that is the best place to get something. In fact, for maybe even $10 you can get a very high quality tool, or maybe even just a few dollars. Depends on the place where you would get it. So we are very thankful to have a secondhand store fairly close to us, and they bring in a lot of different tools and different items, and they don't charge a whole lot for them. A little bit more than maybe a thrift store would, but they have a really good selection, so you can almost guarantee if, hey, you need an axe, you go in there, you're going to find 5-10 axes that you can pick through. And so that's a real blessing. So I was able to pick this one up here. So this is a fairly old one here, and it actually is very good steel. And so it originally came with a wooden handle, which worked for a while, but within a maybe year and a half, if you're over swinging a little bit, getting over the wood a little bit too far, it cracked on me, and I'm like, okay, this is a big problem, because now I have to, if I wasn't able to buy or sell, then not being able to just go to the store and buy a new handle for it would be a problem. And having something that's this wooden handle that's more of a liability, where if you break it, then you're out of your splitting maul, which is kind of a very important tool to have when you need to heat your home. And so I went ahead and said, well, okay, that wasn't a very good idea to have a wooden handle on there. So I went and got a fiberglass handle, and this one I put on there, and this is probably maybe 6 years old now, and it's got a few little scratches on it. This has been hit many times on the wood, over striking, and trying to go in between, and it's gotten banged up quite a bit, but it's held up, and it hasn't broken or cracked or done anything bad. It's been extremely good. Using epoxy to keep it on the handle here, so that also makes sure that it doesn't get wiggly or loose, which is a blessing as well, not to have to tap in the little wedges in the top of the wooden handle to get it back on there. So you can see it's just epoxied on there, and it's very solid on the head there. It's quite easy. The handle maybe cost me $10 or $12 to put a new handle on there, and I was thankful that it happened right away, so that I would know that that's not a wooden handle on a tool like that is kind of a hazard, because you're really plowing through things, and it isn't just a dainty little tool that you can be careful with. When you swing the maul at a stick of wood, all kinds of things can happen very quickly, and it could sink into the wood, and yet it didn't split correctly. If there's a knot there, then all of a sudden the handle is hitting the top of the wood there and coming to a sudden stop. And that's what broke the original handle on there. So I'd really recommend that you look, if you're going to buy a new one, look for one with a fiberglass handle. But I would really recommend, unless you really want to spend maybe $40 or $50 for a good quality one, to look for a used one. Look in the thrift stores. Now, you don't always know, but as far as the quality of it, but look on the edge and see if it has a lot of dings and smashes in there. It might be an indication that it's fairly soft. So the best way to split firewood, I find, to keep it simple and not waste a lot of time with gizmos or unique ways of splitting firewood, is to just find a good solid piece of wood that you can chop onto, and a little bit higher than is probably better than too narrow, but just a chunk of firewood, and these would be nicely replaceable. This one is made out of oak, so if you have a little bit of oak on your property, or you can find a oak round here that you can use to chop on, that would probably be the best. I've used some other fir ones as well. My last one finally just split apart and fell apart here, so I had to replace it with another oak piece that I had handy, and this one was fairly flat. You want to kind of level it off so it isn't rocking or anything like that. Get a fairly flat surface so you can balance your wood on there. And so here's some examples of some of the ways to do it. Just put it up there like that, and then wanted to be able to split it apart and have it fly, and you can just go grab stuff and put it in your tub or different things like that. An example of how to split like that. So that means that you're putting your hand one. There's usually be like a swell here at the base here that you want to be able to grab onto. If you're right-handed, or then you want to use your left hand at the base here and your right hand at the top. And if you're left-handed, it'd be the reverse. So as you come down, you're sliding this down here. So maybe you're coming and stopping with your hands about this position. So it's kind of a swing. So that's why they're having leather gloves that are a little bit slippery that you can slide the handle on and not have it stick. Is very helpful. And then here's a big oak piece, and also when you want to look for where the knots are. So this one's got a knot up here towards the top, so if I try to split it here, it most likely won't split very well. And so you went ahead and put all the knots at the bottom if you can. If there's knots at both ends, then you do your best you can, but if you do see some knots sticking out there, go ahead and put that towards the bottom. It'll be a lot easier to get it split. And then look for your cracks too. There'll be some cracks. It's usually somewhere on here. It's called checking. And so you want to be able to cut along those cracks as much as possible. It'll make it a little easier to do your splitting. So with oak, you usually can't get it the first time because it's pretty tough. Like that. And then depends on, if you have like an EPA stove or something like that. A lot of times they like to be burned a little hotter, so usually I try to quarter a block of wood about that size. This way I can just kind of bend over. You can also use your maul to lean on as you're picking up stuff, so that you're not hurting your back so much. Kind of use it as a cane. You can reach over there and put your weight on there. Like that. So then I just have a little spot over here by my wood bins inside the shed here, so if it's raining or something like that, I don't get my wood in my tubs wet, so I try to keep them inside the shed when I'm filling them up. And so I just kind of pile it around there, throw it over there, and then I go over there and fill them up with the firewood that I've split there. Go ahead and just grab these pieces up here. You can also use your knees when you're down here like this to relax your lower back on your knees, so that you're not hurting your back. You can reach down by both sides too. There's another chunk of wood here, so you'll see that there's some knots. Usually the knots are always together, like around in a circular fashion, because that's how the branches tend to grow. So you see that there's some knots there at the bottom, so I'd want to be chopping from the top here. And look to see if there's any checks. This one pretty much doesn't have any, but there's a little bit of a check coming down here, and let's see here. There's a little bit of an indication here that it wants to be cut different ways, and so you kind of look for the natural cracking that would go on. So you can see here, right about here, there's a little bit of a crack here, so that's kind of where the direction that you want to chop it in. So then put the knots down there at the bottom. splits it nicely. It doesn't take very long, just a few minutes to get that chopped up. So here you can see I have a nice little pile here. I can just put it in my tubs here and get that ready to go. Try not to get them stacked too high so I accidentally break my tubs or anything like that. But yeah, this is a good amount here, and if that's too much weight for you, well, just don't put much in your tubs. Some good plastic tubs seem to work the best for me. This one is just a green one is, oh, that's just a steer light or something like that one that we had laying around that I made use of for that, and the other one's just another little higher quality plastic tub with some handles on the side. Alright, well, that's all I have for you today. I hope that was helpful if you're just getting into country living and wanting to know what tools you need in order to process firewood. Having a good splitting maul and maybe a sledgehammer and a wedge is a very good starting place. And it's pretty much all I use, and use the splitting maul 90% of the time for most of the work that I do. And so hope that encourages you that it's very possible, and try to find systems that allow you to do it more efficiently. And you can do something maybe for a year and decide, is that the most efficient way or can I come up with a more efficient way of doing this so you don't spend too much time in there. So God bless, and I will see you guys on the next video.